Mr. Khan Porter, welcome to the Root Training Podcast, my man. How are you?
Thanks for having me, brother. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
It's a long
There's some
time since a lot of people
hardcore
might have
looking
heard.
headphones you're rocking with.
They're definitely overkill. I realized after I bought them that they're actually not that necessary for podcasting, but
And they look good though.
I
You
bought them
look
now,
very
so
you look very podcast official in them. I think.
look very legit.
Yeah.
I think it's been a long time since people might have heard you speak on a podcast and stuff like that. So if you want to give people a rundown into like what life is looking for like for you these days, so they have a bit of a better idea if they haven't heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has been. I think I was thinking about that before I jumped on today. It's been a hot minute since I've done any kind of like long form content. What does life look like for me these days? Oh, still battling away, doing a bit of training and competing here and there. I feel like I wanted to do masters last year. I'm a masters athlete. That's its whole thing. And I wanted to do masters last year and then kind of like retire and be done with competing. And I think I've competed more in the 5 months since finishing the games last year than I have in kind of the last few years combined. So that's not been super successful on my part. But yeah, balancing the athlete life with I started my own business last year as a counselor, online business there. And then yeah, kind of dipping my toe into the waters of some projects external to training and competition that I've kind of had on the back burner for quite some time and wanted to kind of do. Working on a book that I've wanted to put together for ages. Yeah, I work a couple of days a week now with clients, and then working on some a platform and some digital products and stuff like that that I want to bring out. So keeping myself very busy outside of the gym, but then I don't try as I might to walk away from, being an athlete. It's just such a central part of who I am, and the beauty of having the masters competition. And the masters competition seems to be growing, which is so cool. There's so many more competitive opportunities for masters this year, so it's cool. It means that I get to kind of keep scratching that itch as well.
And do you think it's a case of like trying to find that balance point of where you can continue doing all that stuff, but still like not spending 5 or 6 hours a day in the gym to be able to still do all the other stuff you're pursuing as well? Like that's been a big learning curve for you.
Yeah, it has, and it's a learning curve I'm still trying to figure out. I think that learning curve, it's curving more towards right. If I want to continue to compete, I'm going to have to do so in a way that's manageable with the amount of volume that I can commit to. I spent most of pretty much since the games last year. The majority of my training was done in classes. I trained at 168, CrossFit 168 in Alexandria. I jump in on the class with them. Well, I was jumping in on the class with them, but what I've kind of found was I used to be able to ride. The biggest thing that I've found as an older athlete is I used to be able to ride off the back end of a CrossFit Games season. My fitness would stick around for a lot longer. And when it would dip a lot less. So I'd kind of finish the season. I'd do the bare minimum to maintain a semblance of fitness. I might drop by 10 to 20%, but then I'd be able to bounce back pretty quickly. And what I've just kind of found, particularly the last couple of comps that I've done, was, training 3 times a week, just doing 3 classes a week, and 4 or 5 days of jujitsu, which is kind of another thing that I've picked up last year, isn't conducive to being able to compete anymore. I don't hold as much fitness. That dip goes from 10, 20% to 30, 40%. And then, a week of hard training doesn't bounce you back. It's kind of like you got to commit to a month. And that's where I'm at at the moment, leading back into the season and trying to get back into an amount of volume that doesn't beat me up, that gives me enough time to do the other things that I'm working on at the moment, but that is going to bring me back up to a level of fitness that allows me to keep competing at the level that I want to compete.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's like trying to find that minimal effective dose
Yes.
that still lets you play, but also and play well. But
Mm.
yeah, it's not all consuming. And I think
Yeah.
probably it's the fact that you've got that body of work over the last 10, 15 years that has allowed you to now be able to like, okay, I can refine this, and especially if you throw away things like strength, if you're like, okay, I'm okay to just stay as strong as I am, like, do you know what I mean? That allows me to compete. I'm not going to win a strength event, but I can still
Yep.
hang,
Yep.
get a top whatever finish, and all of a sudden that's like an hour and a half out of your day back just from not having to like do a strength block trying to work on stuff. So
Yeah, well, I
How do
think as
you
well,
think
when you talk about
your
minimum effective dose, it's within the context of strength training that I think that becomes the most important. So things like, back in the day, you do some form of squatting almost every single day. And my knees, my hips, my ankles and everything, like my body can't handle that anymore. The same as like aggressive heavy Olympic weightlifting multiple times a week. My body doesn't enjoy that. So it's like, okay, I know how to snatch, I know how to clean and jerk. I'm gonna get more out of doing accessory pieces. Like, so how I structure my strength training, I do 3 big strength days a week. Those strength sessions are like the heavy lift of that day is heavily centered around either the squat, the deadlift, or the press. And then I use Olympic weightlifting accessories to supplement those, to keep just my body ticking over. Once a week, I touch on some variation of a snatch. Once a week, I touch on some variation of a clean and jerk. I squat, I single leg, I pull from the floor heavy, I press heavy, or put a barbell over my head once a week. And I found that over the years, because I have that kind of technical proficiency in the Olympic lifts, like you said, I'm not losing a dramatic amount of strength. In fact, I'm, very slowly every now and again moving the needle in a positive direction by focusing on those primary lifts where I'm lifting the most amount of weight. I'm getting the most amount of kind of heavy work done through that, and then just supplementing that with other lifts that, to do all of the above heavy each week would just bang my body up, and I know that. And will I be able to ever go out there as an individual? My goal is this year I'd like to go back to Torian as an indie and place top 10. But I'm not going to walk out there in the strength event if that's the case expecting a top finish. Maybe if I get lucky and it's a snatch, I can sneak in a top 10 finish, but otherwise it's going to be a mid-pack finish, and that just is what it is. I'm okay with that.
and yeah, because you can't cheat, I suppose, the conditioning side of things. Sort of, you have to put in the time that
Mm.
you have to put in.
Yep.
But yeah, if you can trim the weightlifting and strength stuff, that's just a game changer. Regards time and like energy to allocate to other things as well.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And then honestly, like, that 3 day a week model is something that I picked up from my coach Yami, and I've been working with him for 4 years now, and this will be my 4th year, like with him, kind of in my corner. And we don't work as closely anymore because he's super duper busy. But I really, it was really interesting when I was training face to face within that period that I was in Iceland with him. Was really cool because I was forced into a situation where I was with the coach that was my actual coach every single day. So I couldn't get a program, look at it, think that I knew better and be like, oh, I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this here and there. I had eyes on coaching. Everyone in the group did the same thing. And we did this kind of 3 day, like 3 real big strength sessions a week. We might do another day where we do a little bit of lifting, but it wouldn't be very much. But it was almost always strength on its own with nothing else in those sessions, big break between that session and the next session. And I really felt like I was able to get stronger and fitter simultaneously. And it's probably the first time I've really felt that throughout my career. And I think that it's a pretty foreign concept now. And so now I'm coaching athletes, and I have sort of 5 or 6 athletes now that I'm working with, and one of them, we've just finished her first 8 week block, and I took that same approach of separating her big strength sessions from her other sessions. I thought a lot about what was the most, the hardest workout, the hardest cardio sessions on her nervous system as well, and tried to space it out so she had a lot of time for her nervous system to recover after and between strength events. And despite us again only doing 3 major strength sessions a week, like when she just retested some of her stuff, she put 20 pounds on her deadlift, 10 pounds on her squat, uh, just hit some unbelievable numbers at some other tests that we did. And this is an athlete that's been training at a high level for a long time. So I think there's a lot of merit to figuring out that structural, probably the best structure to get the most bang for your buck out of a week. And I really think that separation of strength and conditioning is an underutilized tool in the CrossFit space.
It sort of ties into as well. Like I saw something recently. You know how the boys, Dallin, Jason, were at the ranch doing that event for CrossFit, and they had a live stream, and a lot of comments were like, I now understand why athletes are spending 6-7 hours a day in the gym, because there's a lot of faffing around with You're cooling down, warming up for every piece. You're warming up, you're cooling down for every piece. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably an important thing to point out for people is that, okay, these pro athletes, yes, they're spending this amount of time in the gym, but that also doesn't mean that they're going hammer and tongs
No,
for 7 hours a day. Like, you
no.
can't do that.
No, and that I mean that's the other thing that I really liked about when I was in Iceland. Like, yeah, we would be in the gym 6 to 8 hours a day some days, and it seems like such a long amount of time, but an hour of that is, like you said, faffing around, warming up. And what I also like about separating strength pieces from hard endurance pieces and hard interval pieces is when you're in a competition, you're warming up for each event as a separate piece, and the idea is to put the most amount of intensity into that piece possible. So if I've got someone in the gym and I give them a 2 hour training block, and in that 2 hour training block, the first 75 minutes of that is strength, and then they're going to roll into a conditioning piece, or I have them do a conditioning piece and then roll into the strength piece, their warm up for whichever piece comes second is almost certainly going to be incomplete, right? They're not going to warm. And this is the other thing: most people don't warm up anywhere near properly for an aerobic or an anaerobic or a endurance piece, let's call it. They skip it. It's 3 minutes on the bike. I mean, fuck, I did that just before I jumped on this podcast. I did a bit of strength training first, and then I hit a 20-minute workout, and my warm up was a 3 minute bike erg. And I looked at myself and I was like, you're going to hurt yourself in
What are
this
you doing?
workout.
Yeah.
All right. You know, you made your bed, sleep in it. And I think that spread out training day for these pros is what needs to happen, is why we're seeing why we're seeing the sport blow up in the way that it is. Like these guys like Dallin and Justin, Jason, all those James, like these guys are on another fucking level, and they're only getting better because we've kind of the sport's been around long enough now that the good coaches, like, which you guys have so many of at Brute, and the good coaches out there, they understand how to now apply the principles of exercise science to CrossFit style training and to maximize each session that their athlete gets. And looking at like a big day of training, it needs to be spread out so you can actually get the maximum intended stimulus from each training piece with an adequate warm up, with an adequate cool down, include all the requisite accessories, hit all the right energy systems, touch on all the different types of strength. You look at, everyone's doing plyometrics now, and, static, isometrics as well. All these different pieces that play that, back in the day it was go in, hammer some strength, hammer a couple of metcons, go back in, maybe do the same thing again in the afternoon if you were real fucking crazy. And whoever's body could handle the volume and the intensity the best probably went to the games. Whereas now it's like there's an art to programming now in the sport that's come from how long it's been around and being able to see that. And we are seeing that art put on display in just how fucking good these guys and girls are now. Like the level, and it upsets me that the sport doesn't have the same amount of like publicity and spotlight on it that it did back in the day. Because what these people are doing, like the guys and the girls, is super fucking human, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
I sat and watched the games last year. You were at the games last year, right? I sat and watched the guys do that first event where it was almost 10K of running with 3K of rowing. And they're running like a 340, 345 for that 10, like pace for that 10K. And then 2 days later, pulling 60 deadlifts at 160 kilos and then squatting 220 plus kilos afterwards. Like people don't quite, people are too busy wondering what everyone holds for their 1K loops on the high rocks to really appreciate how good this sport has become. And it's disappointing, and I really hope that starts to change. I think it's heading back in the right direction, but yeah, and that's a testimony to it. Like, I feel like we've cracked the code on how to actually program for and coach this sport.
And it's like, it's all that fringe stuff that's getting better too. So, like, the running, like you said, the running paces,
Mm.
okay, maybe not as good as an Olympic, 5K runner, but
Oh.
compared to what they were 10 years ago,
Oh yeah.
and also like the lifting compared to what it was 10 years ago, like we're moving further and further to those extremes while still being able to do everything else just as well.
Yep.
And you're like, how is it possible?
I don't wonder how. I think the how is that the sport's been around long enough now that there's a formula emerging to how best to program for it at an elite level. There is, and but look at it as well. Okay, so also look at, there's on the men's side, let's call it say 10 to 12 men internationally that on their day could all push for the podium. The men's is quite, close like that. The women's, you've got Tia, and then you've also got like a pretty solid group of girls that could all kind of like on their day push for that podium. And then that after that kind of like, let's call it 8 to 12, there is a bit of a gap in terms of like a tier system of let's look at like what the level is at. And those guys and girls that are in that kind of top tier, they are doing this full time. They're making a living, and through that they're able to do exactly what we just spoke about, which is spend all day in the gym doing 7 or 8, instead of doing 2 sessions, they do 7 pieces spread out throughout the day. Or instead of doing like, 1 session and then a little bit of accessory work, they're able to spread that out and do that, train like it is their job, because it is their job. And that's where you're seeing this gap emerge between those athletes that are still kind of, still very, very, very good, but maybe don't have the financial backing from sponsors to be able to do it full time. And I think that's where, because my generation that came through was kind of the first generation that was able to get paid to do CrossFit. I was in at the peak of my individual career, or even just in the peak of my career financially. I was making 200 grand plus a year just doing CrossFit, right? And that was, that meant that I could go and train all day, every day if I wanted to. I didn't want to. I wanted to spend that money in stupid ways and do other things. But like that, ours was the first generation that was able to sort of start doing that. So we were the guinea pigs for this current generation. We were the guinea pigs and the people that tried, okay, well, I've got 6 hours in a day to train. What should I do? And so we kind of threw mud at the wall until we worked out what stuck. And now you've got this generation, this next generation coming through that are doing it professionally, that are able to, but the formula's set. They're not throwing, it's not a guessing game anymore. It's no, we know that this works. And that's why like these guys and girls are just superheroes. It's crazy.
Well, I think you're the first person that I've heard talk about endorsement money, right?
Hmm.
Publicly. It's
Hmm.
like this hush seems to be this hush hush topic. Like people will talk about, obviously it's public record, their winnings at events and stuff like that. But it seems like everyone wants to keep their sponsorship dollars under
Hmm.
wraps, And I think there's a level of transparency in that would definitely help young people. Like at least you know what you're dealing with. You're like,
Hmm.
there's no ambiguity. You're like, okay,
Hmm.
on the top end, I could earn X amount, and obviously the other end is zero. But it at least gives you this, I suppose, idea in your head of like, okay, if I want to pursue this, what could potentially be the reward, rather than just a guessing
Yeah.
game, right?
And but unfortunately, so I made that most of that money. I don't know most, but like a lot of that money wasn't because I was great, because I was good enough at CrossFit, gave me a platform. I was willing to just like, I don't know, call it what you want to call it, do influencer work on the side and pick up contracts with brands that had no real care how I placed at the CrossFit Games. They just cared that I was fit, working out, and happy to post and promote their stuff. I like, this was, and I'm okay with that because I knew that that would supplement my ability to train and travel, which was the two things that mattered a lot to me, kind of in my late 20s, early 30s. It's funny though these days it's a different world these days because social media is so much more saturated. I think I got a following on social media before it was super common. Like I had over 100,000 followers back in like 2014, 15. And there wasn't a lot of people that did, particularly not male athletes in the CrossFit space that had that following back then. And then like that allowed me to get my foot in the door with brands and to open up opportunities. I had a manager that existed outside of the CrossFit space back then that was picking me up deals with like, I remember doing like a campaign for Pure Blonde, the beer, in like 2016. It was worth like 40 grand just to
Yeah,
run
wow.
the City to Surf to them, post a bunch of stuff to them. So a lot of the decent coin that I made was from stuff like that. And then I did like a lot of training camps, and I was always hustling and figuring out ways to make money, like to support my training and the lifestyle that I wanted to live. And I think that's where, unless you're in that top echelon, like we spoke about, and even then, I'm not sure all of them are getting. I don't know what they're getting paid these days, but and I have some of the young boys. They come up like, "How do I make a career out of this?" And I was like, "Well, you kind of don't. You kind of use it as a tool to make a living somehow else. Whether it's you get programs, or you do camps, or you do workshops, or you." I don't know, like align with other brands outside the CrossFit space. That's where the money is, unless you're in that real top group.
Yeah, you have to leverage it.
Mm.
It's yeah, because realistically, unless you are in that top group, you can say you're trying to win, but are you really trying to win? Like,
Yes, I
we're
never
not in a
bullshit anyone like that. I was never. I would have loved to have been good enough to win. I existed in the era of like peak Matt Fraser, and it
yeah.
just kind of wasn't really on the cards for me. But I wanted to do as well as I could, but I understood that my best bet to make money was to leverage who I was off the competition floor, which then allowed me to put in the best effort I could on the competition floor. And I think that's what a lot of athletes have to figure out. These athletes that want to make money without having to go and get a real quote unquote real job, let's call it. Like you got to figure out a way to leverage yourself as a human being, as a character, as an athlete that extends beyond what you do on the competition floor. And you got to find what that looks like for you. You can't fake that either. That's really important to say. You can't put on a persona and pretend to be someone you're not, because authenticity over anything else is, it's a rare commodity these days, and it's so much more marketable than this fake persona of who you think you should be.
Yeah, and how do you think that all ties into like being experienced and having been around the block for so long and now doing the counseling stuff you're doing? Like, what are your sort of pearls of wisdom for young people trying to keep their head right whilst also pursuing this thing, which isn't easy, and you're seeing it time and time again, like chew up and spit out young people,
Mm.
and like how do we as a community try and help or prevent that from happening, I suppose.
I think I think that starts with the individual first and the community second. And I mean, this is how I practice as a therapist when I'm working with clients. The base of kind of like getting them mentally well, or mentally well enough to pursue goals. Because the old CrossFit pyramid. I really liked the old athletic one. It's like nutrition and then endurance, gymnastics, weightlifting, sport at the top. Remember the old, you get that in your level one, you learn that. God, there's so much gold in the CrossFit level one, and that's one of the little gold nuggets that I will forever remember. I would like to take that pyramid and extend it one more and put mental health or mental wellness down the bottom. Because if you try to get someone that's mentally a little bit and when I say mentally unwell, I don't mean they have an acute psychiatric problem. That's something that needs acute care. I'm talking someone that struggles with emotional regulation, or someone that lacks the ability, that isn't great with time management, or that just gets a bit anxious and overthinks and, ruminates on things, or beats themselves up too
Self-esteem.
much. Yeah, self-esteem, like all this kind of like the not the basics, but like the entry level kind of mental wellness aspects, let's call it. You got someone that's struggling with that and you try to get them to start to follow a diet, they're going to struggle with it. You get them to try, you want them to go and push that level, or even just do 60 minutes of zone two that's boring as fuck. And like, they're not going to want to do that because they don't, mentally, they're not solid enough to be able to do that. And it's this whole area of performance that's neglected. We get all this mindset and like mental performance coaching and mindset work and sports psychology that's centered around an athlete performing well and what they need to do mentally to do that, but it still lacks to treat the underlying issue, which is a person or an athlete's mental health. So if I have someone that comes to me and they want to work on that, the first few things we start to look at, I was like, okay, there's two big ones. It's like, how clear are you in who you are, like your identity? And does that identity extend beyond simply being an athlete? Like, who are you off the competition floor, which we kind of touched on before? And how well can you regulate your emotions? Like, how emotionally intelligent, emotionally literate, and good are you at self-regulation? And they're kind of like your two big starting points. So you get someone that comes in, and you get these people that are burning out. Like, the first thing I would do to them is like, do the work to figure out who you are, and to do that from what we call like an internal to external lens, right? Who are you? Because that's who you want to be, because that makes you feel good, because that's aligned with what you value, not what you think other people want you to be, not what you think will make you the most successful, not what you think society's values mean that you should behave. You've got to figure out your identity internal to external. Now, it doesn't mean just go off and be a cunt and just fuck everyone else, what everyone else thinks. I think that's a really dangerous mindset that we see a lot these days. This almost like aggressive individualism that says don't
Yeah.
give a fuck about what anyone else thinks. You should have a select group of people that you do care about what they think, because connection would be another pillar that I would instill upon an athlete. How good is your network? Like, how good are the people connections in your life to other people? So we can't just disregard everyone else. What we've got to do though, but we do need to strip back the layers, tune out the noise, and figure out what's important to you and who you are. How can you live in alignment with what's of value to you? How can you meet the needs that are important to you? And how can you pursue goals that are meaningful to you, not to anyone else? When you get rock solid in who you are, then we can start. And while you're getting rock solid in who you are, the other thing we want to do is start to learn to emotionally regulate. Right. And this is emotional regulation should be taught at schools as far as I'm concerned. It should be, that's a way more important subject than fucking,
Yeah.
I don't know, like economics, or I don't know,
Yeah.
economics is probably actually important because fuck,
Yeah.
tax is hard. But like emotional regulation should be taught at schools because it's a fucking skill, and it is something that the world we live in, I firmly believe, is becoming more and more set up to be dysregulating, whether it's just the
Mm.
sheer volume of information we're confronted with on a day-to-day basis, whether it's the pace with which we're expected to do things, because everything is just quick, quick, quick. Listen to how fast I fucking talk, right? I'm a product of this world, or this changing world. But these things, they're destabilizing and they're dysregulating. And when we don't have practices that we do consistently to help us re-regulate, that give us tools to self-soothe when we're in a crisis, but also just be able to better emotionally regulate on a day-to-day basis. We set ourselves up for failure. So that is a long way, because I will never make a long answer short. I'm good at making a short answer long. That's a long-winded way of talking about the way I would work with, young athletes, or just human beings in general that want to start to make positive changes to their mental well-being. And there are so many tools and skills out there for people, like whether it's going and actually finding a therapist or a counselor or a coach. There's good coaches. Like, these are tools and skills that you can learn. And when I teach this stuff to people, when I work with clients, a lot of them come through the fitness world, which is really lucky because I can use this analogy, but I look at it as like learning, I use the analogy of learning a new movement, right? A lot of people have this misconception that you go to therapy and you'll learn these tools and these skills, and you'll talk to a therapist and they'll tell you something and you'll leave feeling better. And it's a misconception, because the brain works much the same way as our body does, in terms of I'm 36, right? For 36 years, my brain has been laying these neural pathways over and over again in the same way. For me to just think that I can hear something different, or I can get a different perspective, or I can learn this tool and just walk out, all of a sudden my brain's going to behave differently. It's not. The thing's going to trigger me again. It's going to happen. Repetition, consistency is what retrains our brain, retrains our neural pathway, changes our belief structures. And we don't get that by just doing something once. It's why they call, when you hear about doing the work and someone talks about doing the work in a therapeutic perspective, it's because it is work and it takes repetitions to be able to do these things. So you learn these emotional regulations, tools, and skills much the same way as you learn a back squat. But if someone teaches me how to back squat, I walk into the gym the next week, I've just learned it. I've never squat before in my life. It'd be crazy to think I could load up 200 kilos and just squat that. I'd have to go back in the next week and maybe I've done the barbell. Now I've got to add 30 kilos. I've got to do some reps there. The week after, I've got to add 35 kilos. I've got to consistently squat a shit ton of times between when I learn to squat and when I can squat 200 kilos. And this is the same with our mental health and our mental wellness tools, right? We learn them. And we've got to fucking practice them. We've got to practice them when we don't feel like practicing them. We've got to practice them consistently for a period of time. We've got to grit our teeth and go through when, like, hey, I've done this for 2 weeks. Why don't I feel better? It's like, hey, do it for 2 months or 2 years, and maybe then you're going to see the benefits. And people don't want that. People want the short fix. They want to walk into a session. It's not tangible like fitness and all that kind of stuff. Where it's not consistently, I can't necessarily measure, was I a little bit happier this week? Was I a little bit less
Yeah.
reactive this week? It's just kind of like over time it gets better. And because of that, people are reluctant to look at therapy or mental health work as a long-term thing, but that's what it is. As you've got them. So yeah, identity, emotional regulation, and get them on board with the fact that in the same way that their performance development and their physical health is going to be a journey, their mental wellness and being able to kind of look after their mental wellness long term, well beyond just as an athlete, is also a long term investment.
And do you think it's a case of like, it seems to me from the outside looking in that everyone wants it to be or thinks that it's a passive process. You know, you hear things like, I need to find myself, or, and that's very
Yeah.
like
What
passive
do you?
terminology. Like, you have to
Yeah.
go out, on my view, you have to go out and create yourself, right?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, like, find yourself where? Like, most people say that they
Yeah.
fuck off to
So
Bali and go
where
on a
did you get
bender for a
lost?
couple of
Yeah.
weeks and, maybe do a little bit of ayahuasca and trip balls in the Amazon jungle. And they're like, I think I found myself. No, it's the same as with everything. Like, you're exactly right. That it's a process. It's work. That's why they call it doing the work. And the process, I like that phrasing. You create yourself, because there's so much research to support the idea that action breeds motivation rather than you have to be motivated to act. Like, you don't just conjure up motivation. You can't just conjure up a sense of self. You've got to do things to or like, find, create could almost be used interchangeably, but they've got to be active, right? It can't just be a passive sit there and wait for it to come. Creating yourself can be practice. They can be big practices, like going and doing things that make you feel uncomfortable. Jesus, like, that's one of the best things. One of the reasons I still compete, because irrespective of the fact that I've been doing it for 14 years, I still feel nervous and anxious and uncomfortable. I don't like to do poorly in a competition. I don't like to feel unprepared. Yeah, I bounce back from it way quicker than I did back in the day, but it's still a process that is uncomfortable for me. And I still find benefit and self-discovery in that. So, like, that's a simple active tool that you can use to find or create yourself, is do things that make you feel uncomfortable. But you can do other things that are smaller than that as well. And you can do just like reflective journaling exercises. You can do, whether if you into yoga, meditation, whatever it is, like, there are tools that aren't these grandiose actions. You don't have to go to the CrossFit Games to discover who you are. You can commit to doing a hard workout 3 days a week and just see how that makes you feel about yourself, see what you learn about yourself through that process. But yeah, you're right. It's got to be active.
Because yeah, it's all relative, right? And like, I think we even had a conversation when we caught up at the start of the year, and it's a case of like,
Mm.
the why is so important. You asked me what my why was, and I try and synthesize it down and distill it into the simplest thing of like, competing brings out the best of you, and it can bring out the worst of you, and it's how you then work through, like, it's an opportunity to work through that and then better yourself. Like, it's just a vehicle for that, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. And like, for us, that vehicle is really hard CrossFit style training. For other people, it might be running. For other people, it might be
Lifting,
yoga
yeah.
and advancing themselves at that. For some, it might be creative. It might be creating art, music, poetry. For some people, it's, being the best husband or dad or partner that they can possibly be. People find meaning and purpose through all different natures. Now, I'll go one step sort of prior to figuring out your why, and draw it back to that idea that your identity sits at the base of that. Like, if you don't know who you are, that who you are is kind of what is important to you. What do you value? What are your needs? What are the needs that you really need to fulfill to actually feel good about yourselves? What are your belief structures? Where do they come from? Like, what is it that you believe to be true about yourself, about other people, and about the world? And if you don't spend time actively figuring that out, it's hard to find a why that's actually meaningful. And when you don't have, like we spoke about, if you don't have a meaningful why, well, you're not going to fucking follow through on anything that you do. As soon as anything gets hard, you're going to be like, that just wasn't for me. And then you fall into one of two camps. Then when things don't go well, you either go, it's internal, external blame. You either go, I'm not good enough, and it reiterates that as a belief that you're not good enough. So you stop trying because you don't believe that you're capable. Or you start to go, there was something wrong with that. That thing's broken. You start to do that, and then you start to avoid things because you feel like, oh well, that's something's going to go wrong with that. You start to kind of get bitter at the world because the world keeps going against you. And both of those ideologies, or both of those ways of thinking, are so flawed.
Well, it is, but it's also like, if your identity is tied up too much in what the external world. So take yourself for an example. Khan Porter, CrossFit athlete. If you listen to the external world, CrossFit athlete, CrossFit athlete, CrossFit athlete, CrossFit athlete. If you don't have that North Star within yourself of knowing, I'm Khan Porter who also does XYZ, you're just going to buy into that noise, right? And then if for whatever reason that gets taken away from you, then okay, then we're in an identity crisis because you don't have that true North Star of knowing I'm actually bigger and more than the sum of the things that I do, right?
Mm. Mm.
So I think my perspective on it anyway is that use it again as a tool, like use the external
Yeah.
stimulus, whether it's people labeling you and whatnot, but don't let that be the be all and end all, because then you're going to sort of you're buying the press,
Mm.
you're buying into you're drinking the Kool-Aid, and then
Yeah.
when things
Well,
don't go well, it's like, well,
and how brutal a life to live if, and so one of my favorite psychotherapists, Terry Real, he uses this idea, and we kind of touched on it before, of like healthy self-esteem versus unhealthy self-esteem, and healthy sense of self-worth versus unhealthy sense of self-worth. And so an unhealthy sense of self-worth is external to internal. You derive a sense of self-worth from things that happen externally that give you a sense of validation or that make you feel a sense of value. Perfect example, an athlete that only feels like they have a sense of self-worth and value based on their success. And now I can use myself as an example of that, which I'll come back to, but a healthy version of self-esteem is that internal to external, which is where you have a clear sense of what's of value to you and you live in alignment with those values. And it allows you to kind of, you can tap into that external and you can have external motivation and you can use the external to motivate you sometimes, but you're not reliant on it, right? And also then when the external starts to tell you you're not good enough, whether that's just based on your performance, critics, because fuck, we know like there are so many critics in the athletic world, just in general. You can tune that out because you're still living in accordance with your internal to external sense of self-worth, right? You're still fulfilling those internal needs that you have. And so like my story through the CrossFit world is exactly that. Like I grew up with a very unhealthy sense of self-esteem that stemmed from like I was a weird kid, still a weird kid, I guess, but I didn't fit in. I struggled to fit in, and I felt this real disconnection with my peers. And I got picked on and didn't quite fit in, and that made me. And but the first thing I ever felt like a sense of like validation and connection to people outside of like my family unit from was my academic success when I was quite young. I was quite bright as a kid, and so I got this external validation. Hey, if I tried hard at school, the teachers would congratulate me and I would get this external reward. And then so for a long period of time, I existed in this external to internal state of self-worth and self-validation. And then that continued when I went into high school and I started to get attention from girls. Now all of a sudden that was my external validation. So that became a sense of self-worth. Then you get someone that's existed with the external to internal for such a long period of time. All of a sudden I start CrossFit. I'm really good at it right away. I'm at the games in a short period of time. I have this insane amount of external validation for something, which is what I'm existing in this state of needing that external validation to have a sense of self-esteem and self-worth. For 3 years, I make the games, and then, but for all of a sudden, the games goes from being a good thing. Now, this is such an anxious pursuit for me because that's how I'm deriving my sense of value and self-worth. Any criticism, anything external that may allude to me not being good enough at that, just like a fucking knife, like dagger, right? All of a sudden, 2017, I missed the games. And this is like that it was like this shattering of that sense of external validation. And so then began my journey to switch that from an internal to external, right? So now, and I'm rock solid. I know exactly what's a value to me, and living in that internal to external. And I think it's one of the dangerous places an athlete can find themselves is if they are in that external to internal, right? And that's where I think that when we don't develop a clear sense of self externally to our sport, any athlete in any sport, well, then we run that risk of getting trapped in that external to internal. So all of a sudden now, like your ability to do, like your sense of self-worth and just general wellness is so contingent on something beyond your control, which is the world around you. We have such limited control on so many aspects of the world around us yeah, we get caught in that, then it's a terrible place to be. And I say that from experience.
Do you think, were you aware of it at the time? So pre 2017, whilst you were like going to those different wells for external validation, did you feel as though you had even identified that yet, or you were just blissfully unaware, floating from
I'd
internal
say,
validation to external validation?
good question. I'd say no, I've always been quite self-aware, and I've always been quite a deep thinker. And I would almost go so far as to say I was aware, maybe not with the amount of clarity I can describe the experience with now, but I had enough awareness for that to actually be its own source of like both anxiety and, let's call it, self-loathing, right? Because I didn't like myself during that period of time at all. I really disliked myself. And the reason I think I did was because there was some level of awareness I had that I was not living a life that was aligned with my values and what was of value to me. And I wasn't treating myself well and I wasn't looking after myself by being so contingent, by letting this external world affect me so much. And I think that maybe, yeah, like I said, I don't think I could articulate it in the way that I do now, have the level of knowledge about that kind of stuff that I do now either. But I was aware enough to know that I was doing something wrong. And that in of itself, like that's, I think anxiety, there's clinical anxiety obviously, but I think like that kind of low level anxiety malaise, just like that feeling that something's off. And it's a lot of clients that will come to me and it's just like they don't even quite know what's wrong, but they just feel a little bit off. Something's not right. They don't necessarily know what's wrong, but they know that something's not right, but things aren't right. And that kind of that to me is a pretty clear indicator that we're disconnected from ourselves in some way. And that if we stay disconnected with ourselves for a long enough period of time, I feel like it follows a trajectory of we just like something's wrong and everything seems to be feeling pretty shitty. And then we start to get pretty angry at like the world and pretty angry at things around us. And then that turns into this like it's either this misplaced resentment at other people or other things. But that resentment's it's really self-aimed resentment. It's resentment that we feel towards ourselves for treating ourselves or for living in a way that's not in our own best interest. We're not looking after ourselves, right? We're treating
Yeah,
ourselves poorly. We may
malaligned.
not recognize it. And so we either it just builds up as self-hate, self-loathing, or it does become external as we start to resent other people. We start to get, we start to think that the world's against us, that all these people are treating us horribly, but realistically we're treating ourselves horribly. We're just not ready to look, we're not ready to face that yet. So I think, yeah,
Well, and then
I,
yeah,
I think I had that awareness.
all that external stuff is just a mirror that you're like, that's the part of it that you're taking, right? So you could have an interaction with someone and there could be equal parts negative and positive
Hmm.
to that interaction, but because of how you feel intrinsically, you're only going to take away the negative, right? And think,
Yeah.
oh,
I mean, we're already wired.
that person thinks so. Yeah.
Exactly. We're already wired to see things more negative. Like we're supposed to say, oh, it's like 70% of information that we take in, we're supposed to give a negative skew because it's what used to keep us alive. That negativity bias used to keep us alive. So we are all negative, and you see this play out on social media. Fuck, I see it. I post something, and the way people interpret it, I'm like, that is so far from what I've said or posted
Yeah.
or meant. But you are looking at the world with this hyper negative vigilance that's evolutionary. You can't help it, and I get that. Just I don't get mad at these people, but like having an awareness that we're already skewed so negatively anyway, like far, if you're living in a state of misalignment or you're not living, treating yourself really well, fuck yeah, you're gonna see everything even worse. It's gonna be amplified.
Yeah. And like, so 20, would you coin 2017 as your rock bottom? Like emotional rock bottom? Yeah.
Probably had a few rock bottoms over my times for different reasons. I don't know. Yeah, I think no, maybe not. I just think that it was an awakening of sorts. I wouldn't say it was rock bottom though. No, I would say it was like an awakening of sorts. I don't know. I went through a pretty rough time, 2019, 2020. It was probably pretty bad. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if I've ever had a rock bottom so much as I've had moments of acute awareness and awakening. about different
Like
things
enough
though.
stimulus, yeah, enough stimulus to
Yeah.
cause a change.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like yeah, catalyst to change. It was 2017 was a massive catalyst for me to make some big changes in my life. But yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, I wouldn't say I could pick. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe, but I wouldn't say I've had one rock bottom. I've probably had a few big moments that have been catalysts for making major change.
And it's like I think, well, sometimes people need that. You probably see that with people that you work with, where until such point that there is enough pain or discomfort or a negative like outcome,
Mhm.
they're not really pushed or driven to make the changes necessary, right?
Yeah.
Because like we've said, it's work.
Yeah.
So people aren't going to do work for no reason.
No. We look at the information out there on post traumatic growth, like the idea that when you go through trauma, and you have to be very careful with this. It's not to say that we should seek out trauma as a catalyst to growth, but there's so much Google post traumatic growth and the amount of data to support the idea that after big like traumatic events, when we're able to make it through that, and obviously some people struggle to make it through that, and that's okay too. Like not everyone is the same, but there is a lot of data to show that that big traumatic events can actually often lead to some of the most profound like types of growth, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is. So yeah, like it's being a and that's where it's being able to use these canon events as catalysts for change, not just kind of go, hope this is okay.
Yeah, I think everyone's just a lot of society seems to be in that numb spot in the middle, right? Where things aren't how they want it to be, but they're not
Mm,
bad enough to incite change, and they're just sort of coasting along in this numbness. Um, and it also, I think, plays into furthermore, like what you just said. It's like there's a big difference between pain and suffering, right? If you can
100%.
try to teach yourself how to um, deal, and I suppose that comes into emotion regulation, but deal with and digest and process pain without the suffering element, then you can start to apply that to like anything that gets thrown your way, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And being able to differentiate between the two is also hugely important. And then that comes back to then being able to process and deal with them, comes back to that, do you have the tools and skills to emotionally regulate, to self soothe when you need to? She strums back to the
Because
importance of that.
yeah, because ultimately, like you guaranteed will not get through your life without pain, right? It's going to
Mm.
come at some point,
Yep.
but you do have a choice on the suffering part. Like that is you have the ability to move the needle on that. So, pain's going to come; it's inevitable. But
Yeah.
what impact that pain has, I think people have a lot more control over than they think.
Yeah, one of my best mates, he has a tattoo down his spine that says, "Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional." He's had that as long as I've known him, which is fuck nearing on 20 years now. God, I'm old. But yeah, I've always loved that, and I've always thought that was such a cool way of looking at it. Like pain is inevitable. You know, suffering. I think a degree of suffering is also inevitable and is an important part of life. Like we need to suffer to some extent, whether electively or otherwise. But how we respond to pain and suffering, I think, is what we have some more choice over. I don't think we have full control over it, but I think we have more control over how we respond to pain and suffering.
Do you think too many people hold their hat on suffering with that like martyristic or martyr view of like, I'm suffering, and then they tie their some of their self-worth into the fact that, I'm willing to suffer, I'm willing to, and really they're signing themselves up for
Yeah,
a life
yeah.
of suffering.
I
Like,
think I think we're living in a time where we have more. How do I phrase this? We're living in a time where we feel we have more connections than ever before, but those connections are so fickle compared to what they used to be. We lack deep connection. And
mm,
so not everyone, but some people, so because we lack deep connection, or some people lack deep connection, so what we do is we look for things that bring us a sense of connection, and we feel connected to other people when they validate our suffering. We feel very connected to other people when we're going through pain. If we're going through pain and we feel like we are suffering and we haven't got anyone that we have a deep enough connection to share that pain and share that suffering with, and that's there to hold us through that, we're going to seek it elsewhere. Where can we find that? Where are we the most connected? Online, I got 180 something thousand people that follow me on Instagram. I don't know that, I shouldn't be even
Yeah, you
remotely
can't. You know, can't know
exposed to
that.
that many people. I shouldn't feel that I have that many people, like even in my sphere of understanding of how human beings exist. Our brains aren't designed for that, right? But even like the average person, they can have 150, 200 followers on Instagram, and even that is still a huge number of people that can give
You
you,
put that
that
in a
can,
room, like you physically put that in a room. It's
bro,
massive. Like
crazy.
people think, oh, I've only got 500 followers or 500 like
Yeah.
friends on Facebook.
You
You
go to
put
a
that
party
in
with,
like a room. Yeah.
yeah, go to a party with 500 people and tell me if you have a meaningful conversation with like 10 of them, right? It's
It's literally.
crazy. It's crazy. But we can get this sense of validation. We can feel this sense of validation and connection, you know, when we share our suffering and when in those kind of situations. So what that does is we do that enough times, or someone does that enough times, and they get hooked on that kind of cycle of connection about like fake connection about, or like supposed connection and validation, that then it becomes part of how they identify. They subconsciously ingrain in their belief structure somewhere that suffering equals connection, so I want to suffer more. And so again, I think it just comes back to, like I said, if I was going to layer on more pillars in terms of building someone's mental wellness, connection would be one. Like, how let's find you some meaningful connection in your life. Like, let's get you some people that you can fucking lean on. Because if you don't have that like network and that community to do that, well, yeah, that's when you start to find these maladaptive ways to seek it out.
Do you think that's a byproduct though of like how everything in this day and age is just becoming about like the lowest hanging fruit or the easiest thing, and like tying it into this, it's like you're able to have like a true connection or relationship with someone. There's a buy-in with it, right? It requires something from you. Like
Yes.
um, there's a level of work that goes into it.
Mm.
Uh, we can sort of bypass that now, like psychologically, because you've got these people you've got access to on a phone, on your laptop, or whatever, and you can get the dopamine from those interactions without necessarily having to put in the work for the
Mm.
connection, right?
Mm. Yep.
So it's like it's short circuiting, like, and like we know, most things where it's free dopamine are generally not good things for us as
No.
like health wise.
Well, they're not great for, yeah. But and it's too easy to get these needs that are complex needs met at a surface level. And like you said, you get that. I go through something sad, something bad happens to me, I feel sad. I could go through the process of going and sitting in front of someone that I care about in real time, opening up to them, crying, what needing them to hold me, not even like, not as a man, but as a human being, like have that kind of, be vulnerable in front of someone that I care about, and actually like let that wall down, right? And actually go through that process to be held through that challenging thing in a real deep and meaningful way. Or I can post about it online, get a bunch of people comment, DM me like, "We love you, you're amazing, don't stress. Oh my god, you poor thing." Get that, that surface level, like, but it's not real connection, because those people, like, the moment they send that text, they stop caring about me. Like the moment they leave that comment or that DM, they stop giving a fuck about what I'm going through, right? But in that moment, it's still like you said, you brought it, like it has that same effect. My dopamine receptor goes, oh, little bit of validation. It 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 feels in that brief moment like I'm meeting my need for connection, which is what I'm desperately looking for in that moment of sadness. I'm looking for connection to comfort me. Like, fuck, connection, intimacy, and connection are such powerful regulatory tools, and such powerful means of helping ourselves through challenge, that if I can get a sense of that in this really simple surface level way, and it can give me a quick hit of dopamine in that moment that may make me momentarily feel a bit better, And then I start to turn to that over and over again. But then over like, why am I not actually happy? I like, I feel this sort of fake. I'm not actually getting better. I'm feeling like I'm meeting the need. Like, and what, like, most of the time we do things to try and meet needs, right? And when bad things happen, we have certain needs that we need met after that bad thing happens to make us feel better. And if we have shit ways of making us feel, it's go like, it's no different to fuck. I know that if I go and get shit faced right now, I'm not really going to be that sad. Or if I go and do a bunch of fucking drugs that make me feel happier, I'm not going to feel sad for a little bit of time. So, like, my need to feel happy, I can go and meet that need by taking fucking two pingers. But I bet you that's not going to make me feel better in the long run, right? Maybe it makes me feel better for a little bit, but it's not going to make me feel better in the long run. And it's the same as
It's like
seeking fake connection or relying on fake
it's
connection to
like
meet your needs.
it's emotional junk food.
Yeah, bro, it is. Beautiful term. I'm going to steal that. It is. It's emotional junk food. That's brilliant. Very good for it. That's very good. I love that.
And also what I think it's robbing you from is with a true connection, it's not an echo chamber, right? those
No.
those connections just tend to be, especially with people with a lot of followers, right? Generally people who follow you like you. They're just going to tell you, like, say you have a situation where something upset you, but maybe I was a dick, right? They're not going to say, hey George, you're a dick, are
Yeah.
they? They're
No.
just going to gas me up.
Like,
They're going to be
oh,
like, oh, poor
you
you.
did nothing
Yeah.
wrong. Fuck him, whoever or her,
Yeah.
whoever upset you. They're the bad guy. Yeah. But when we see it with outrage
You're
culture as
welcome.
well, man. We see it with outrage as well. Like,
Yeah.
you look online these days in these echo chambers, and like, in the same way that like what people, the world's in a weird place where the world's actually never been a safer, more abundant place to live. But we've never been angrier. Like, everyone's angry at them. Everyone's angry. And I think that everyone's angry. Like, everyone's been angry since 2020 because 2020 fucking rocked us. 2020 rocked
Yeah, big time.
human beings in a huge way. And then we got real mad after that. And we've stayed mad. We've stayed mad because guess what? We felt like, what did 2020 do? It isolated us. It removed community and connection from a lot of our lives for an extended period of time. And in that removal of connection, we started to turn on each other. We saw this level of othering that's never existed before. You look at measures of what's the word? Measures of can't think of the word, but basically like measures of how much we are open to other people, cultures, groups, whatever it is. And there, for the first time in like 30 years, they're going backwards. And it's been on that backwards kind of start to slip since 2020 because I mean, and this is all fucking my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But we got removed. Connection was removed from our lives, and community was taken away from us. And in that moment, everyone was just angry and confused. And what do we do when we feel confused for an extended period of time? We get angry. We start to get angry. What does it do? It creates this kind of us versus them mentality. And that's where this real othering occurred, in my opinion. It's always existed, but it was amplified through 2020. I'd go to the gym and there'd be neighbors that would dob me in, and like the cops would turn up, and I was allowed to be training because it was the gym that I owned at the time. So like but there was this weird kind of like everyone's turning on each other, and it's just like we've kind of stayed mad since then. And you see it everywhere online. But guess what? In our anger and in the echo chambers and in the algorithm, if I was angry, I'm on the side of you should get the vax or you shouldn't get the vax, or I'm on the side of we should be able to open our borders versus we shouldn't, or like whatever, COVID's a hoax, whatever team you were on, you were able to find other people on that team online really easily.
Yeah.
And that's just spilled over now into everything that we do. Like, you see it in every fucking subculture that there is. Like, you get put in these like ideological fucking echo chambers, and guess what? Because we're all starved of genuine connection, we fulfill that with this emotional junk food, which is this seeming like this fake surface level connection where I can get mad about something and people will get mad with me. And I've got my brothers and my sisters that agree with me that are anti-immigration or pro-immigration. And I'm not going to get political, or like I'm not giving any of my political kind of leanings away. But like, you can find those people, and that can give you that dopamine hit. It can give you that fake sense of surface level connection that seems to meet the need for connection that we're all fucking struggling with. And that's how we get this outrage culture that's rampant at the moment.
Yeah, you're right. And I think we're just not equipped to.
You tell I'm
I think
passionate about
we're
this and
not
I had a coffee
equipped to.
before this. Fuck. Fired up.
Just a little bit, teeny bit. Um, the I think we're not we're not equipped to deal with so much information, and there's a lot of good things in the world right now, and there's a lot of shit things, right? But my point being, I'm not justifying or saying that the bad things are okay. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think that it's meant to be on our radar, right? If something like you go back 1,000 years, 500 years, if something was happening 5,000 kilometers away, 10,000 kilometers away on another continent, you might hear about it as a story in 30 years' time. You're not hearing
Mm.
about it as it happens.
Mm.
Like, I don't think we're dealt like equipped to deal with that level of like these tragedies all day. Like,
Nah. But even
do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
you're right with the information. Like we're not like what fucking world should Khan Porter, CrossFit athlete with, and counselor have a fucking opinion on a country's immigration policy or on the efficacy of a vaccination? Like, I don't fucking know. At some point, like, I've got to like sit back and go, hey, like, I can watch a few YouTube videos, I can read a few studies, but I ain't fucking study. Like, I have no formal education or qualifications in any of those things. I don't want to fucking harp on about that because people hear those two words and they get so triggered. I'm not saying I'm one way or another on either of those. I'm using them as arbitrary examples. Fucking record show. But I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, in what world should I, like, I'm not going to go into a school and be like, all right, kids, I'm going to teach you guys algebra today. I don't fucking know algebra. Like, why would I do that? I'm not going to turn up. And this is what I love. I love this one as well. I'm not going to rock up. One of my mates is a builder. I'm not going to rock up to his building site one day and be like, hey, brother, I watched a couple of videos on building. Like I've done a couple of tutorials on how to install my toilet was fucked. I managed to fix that up. You go take the day off. I've got it from here. I don't fucking know how to run a building site. I don't know how to fucking build a house. That's absolute madness. But we see the information. If I wanted to, right, I could probably spend a great deal of time learning how to do that, or the information to, maybe I wouldn't even be able to, but the information to learn how to do that exists. And because it exists, and because we can see it, we feel like we can find it, we have this bizarre narcissistic, and that's what it is, like self-aggrandizing idea that we know enough to have a valid opinion, that we can find enough information to have valid opinions about shit that we know fucking nothing about. It's the same with people. We look at a person online, we develop these parasocial relationships with people that we follow online. You see this all the time, right? Someone follows a person for a period of time that shares great deals of their life online, and that they think that they know that person. They have this false sense, and it's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's their brain is designed. If I see a person, I'm supposed to know that person. I'm not supposed to have, like, parasocial relationships are a new phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? I see this person that I follow online and I feel like I know them. And because I feel like I know them, I feel angry if they do something that feels wrong to me. I feel like I should hold them accountable. I have the right to hold them accountable, or I have the right to pass judgment on this person, their character, or their life choices based on the very small snippets of their life that I see online. Like, that's the same madness of these people. That's the same level of madness. And it's a cultural madness that is fucking rife, that exists because we are not designed to consume the amounts of information and content that we do in the way that we do it. We just aren't.
I'm going very deep here, but I just think it all is based in a sense of like people love distractions, and like this is, I suppose, the ultimate societal distraction. It's like if you're too busy wondering about what's happening in the Middle East, happening in America, that is energy you could be spending dealing with your immediate village, your immediate family, your immediate
Yes. Or
relationship,
yourself.
spouse, a relationship with yourself. Exactly. Like, and it's just there's life at the moment in society. It's just this like there's too many holes in the colander. Like there's too many holes in the strainer. Like this energy is just being outpoured everywhere, and it's like use that for stuff that's actually going to directly impact your life, right? If
Mm.
you didn't watch the news, it's not going to like how much of what's in the news directly impacts your life.
Okay.
Such a small amount, right?
Mm. Yeah, but we're
And
made to feel like it. It's made to feel like it very much affects
exactly.
you. That's how they sell shit. That's how they market it. It's how they get ratings. It's like this could happen to you. Probably won't, like statistically, but fear mongering, like it works. And I use exactly, like I love exactly what you said, and I agree. And I always use the analogy of Married at First Sight. You know, Married at First Sight, the show, maths. Yeah. So it's a train wreck of a show where, for anyone that's watching this that hasn't heard of it, people marry a complete stranger, try to make it work for 3 months, and it's just designed to mostly fail. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, the reason these shows are so fucking successful is because it is so much easier for 70, oh, not 70, she's too old. It's called like 46-year-old Janet sitting on her couch, who's unhappy in her relationship, who, you know, was maybe treated poorly by a couple of guys throughout her life, to sit and to watch this show and to see the things that are going wrong in her life played out in this dramatized, publicized version, and judge them, get outraged by that, put all this time and attention into leaving comments on the people on the show that she doesn't like pages, and to vilify these people that she doesn't know, because it is so much fucking easier to look externally and to do that externally than it is to actually turn the lens on yourself and go, why am I so triggered by this? Am I triggered by this because it's happened to me, or because I do some of this shit? Do I not like this person because I actually see a little bit of myself in them? That's kind of fucking scary. And I want to hold myself accountable,
Yeah.
but I'm not quite ready to, so I'll hold them accountable instead. And it's why these things are so successful. It's why people love watching drama unfold online and in other people's lives. Drama is so appealing because it keeps us from actually doing the really fucking hard work on ourselves.
100%. Couldn't agree.
All right, we solved everything. What else? Should we fix poverty now? What can we turn the lens to?
Oh,
We're solving all the world's
dude.
problems today, George. Who thought this was going to be a fucking
Foundation.
fitness
I reckon.
podcast?
Yeah, I know.
Poor people that are
I
tuning
reckon
in
we
and
could do
going,
a
we
whole
just want him to
series.
tell us how to get better at the assault bike. What the fuck? What is this shit?
Yeah. No, it's good. I think we'll find there's lots of people out there that are interested in this sort of stuff, and I think we could even do this like semi regularly. I think there's enough. It's such a deep area and topic that
Yeah,
you could sort of talk about it.
100%, man. And the thing is, to round this all out, to round out this conversation, and bring it all back to fitness. This is the shit that makes you better as not only an athlete but a human being. Thinking about this stuff, becoming aware of this stuff, doing this fucking work, and expanding your worldview to include things like this makes you an infinitely better athlete, in my opinion. My opinion. There's rules to the exception. There's just those people that are just so fucking good, they don't have to think. They just get to do. And they are the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Remember how I said I wouldn't teach algebra? I don't know what that is in an actual percent. But those gifted few can succeed no matter what the fuck they think and do. Some people, like I've heard other people like, nah, like I'm so fueled by the fact that I just like hate losing and hate all this stuff. There's so much data to support that that's not a sustainable outlook, but it works for some people. But for the majority of us, like opening our minds more and expanding the way that we think in a way that nourishes, that creates a sense of inner peace. It's like and like calm. That's how you get better as an athlete as well.
Yeah,
So
I agree, and I think
chiropractic,
it's
coaching,
about finding
counseling.
that fulfillment.
Yeah, 100%, bro. 100%.
Um, yeah, I think that's a good. We've done a good hour and 10.
Fuck, is that how
But
long
yeah,
we've
I
been
think we
talking
should.
for?
I think, yeah,
Let's go. Round 2. Let
it's
me know
crazy.
when. Get
Yeah,
Maddie
I
on
reckon
board. We'll fucking chew the fat as well.
Yeah, awesome, done. I reckon we'll do another one soon. But
Easy, bah.
thank you for your time today.
No worries, man.
Any questions anyone has, leave them in the comments. Can't border everyone.